here. The cartoonists, they like to really exaggerate his ears, his nose. So, be mindful of that. If there's a political cartoon that comes up at some point, that's Johnson's face there, and what the cartoonist really exploited those two larger features that he had when drawing him. He's a congressional veteran. Lyndon Johnson had been in Congress a number of years. I had mentioned this to a lot of you earlier on when it came to the differences between him and Kennedy, and he's really effective at getting legislation passed. Johnson can really get things moving, knows how to get deals done, what he's got to do in order to get things passed, and he does it. He does it very effectively. He makes up for a lot of what Kennedy lacked in that department. Kennedy wasn't good at doing those things and getting legislation through, where Lyndon Johnson, he is. He's very good at that. But Johnson, he inherits the presidency, and he famously says to a joint session of Congress, "All that I have, I would gladly have given up not to be standing here today," referencing President Kennedy's death and all the aftermath from that. Um, Domestically, I mean, he is a new dealer. He is going to expand things similar to Franklin Roosevelt. He is a big government president, probably the biggest government president we have until we get to Barack Obama. We don't get anybody that expands government and entitlements and services in the same way that Lyndon Johnson did until we get to Barack Obama. Now, part of this is we go through a big conservative age after Lyndon Johnson when it comes to the presidency. But this is certainly, a large expansion of government, a large expansion of federal spending. He passes the Economic Opportunity Act. This is $1 billion for a variety of different programs. And that billion number was like hearing a trillion today. One of the big ones he did was VISTA. VISTA stands for Volunteers in Service to America. The idea behind this was like a domestic Peace Corps. So instead of going to other countries, you went to places in the United States where they needed help. And, the idea behind it was for, people to be volunteering and helping out in different parts of the country. The other big one is Head Start, and this is still around today. Head Start was free pre-K for poor families. Head Start is still a bit of a political issue today. Haven't heard it as much recently, but it certainly is something that comes up from time to time. And one of the reasons for that is because, Republicans don't like this. Democrats, do like it. And, you might be thinking, well, how could somebody be against kids getting free preschool? And that's a very good question. The problem with Head Start is, and they've done studies on this, is that Head Start's great, and you can see a difference. There's a definite difference in Head Start children in kindergarten and first grade. They are scoring higher on tests and doing better. But the problem is, by the time these kids get to fourth grade, any difference between the Head Start kids and non-Head Start kids has been erased. So there is no provable evidence that the long-term impact of Head Start is effective. So that's where we get a little, why are we spending money on something that the idea behind it is that this is the start of getting these kids in the proper education mind and getting them moving forward. We just don't see that evidence. Job Corps was a youth training program similar to some of the things that were done in the New Deal, like the National Youth Administration. Job Corps is similar to that. So this is why, Johnson's a new dealer. This is why, he's got a lot of programs that he's pushing through. And it's a big part of his presidency is kind of bringing in that essence of the New Deal, great society. And when it came to the election in 1964, Lyndon Johnson goes up against Barry Goldwater. Goldwater argues against big government. He's the first Republican to do this in a long time. And it's kind of the beginning of the conservative era, and Barry Goldwater kicks it off. It just was not something that was going to win him the presidency. Lyndon Johnson also exploited how Barry Goldwater wouldn't rule out using nuclear weapons to deal with the Vietnam conflict. And they made it seem like he was, some cowboy that was going to, you didn't want their hand on the button type thing. They did a very famous ad showing a girl holding a flower and you picking the flower and then a nuclear explosion happening in the background. And coupled with the fact that Johnson's taken over for Kennedy, there's a lot of love for Kennedy still as a result of it's only a year after Kennedy's died, less than a year actually, just under a year when Lyndon Johnson is elected. And he gets 61% of the vote. That is a massive amount of the popular vote to get. That means basically anyone that was a Republican voted for Barry Goldwater, and everyone else voted for Lyndon Johnson. Independents, Democrats, everybody. But the Great Society is Johnson's domestic agenda. This is what he is known for. It's what he called his program. He passes what's called the Elementary and Secondary School Act. This is $1 billion in federal aid to schools. This was both public and private schools received this money, and this kicks off the federal government's, where the federal government provides a lot more money for education today. The biggest thing Lyndon Johnson does, and the one that has the biggest impact today still, is Medicare. And this is health care for the elderly. You turn 65, it turns into a single payer system, kind of that universal health care. While we don't have that in this country, we do if you're age 65 or above. This is his cornerstone legislation. It is one that, when it was passed, it's one of those things that one of those government programs. It's going to be very, very hard to ever get rid of Medicare. And then there was Medicaid. This is health care for the poor. So if you qualify for Medicaid, if you are at a certain poverty level, the government will also help out there. So Medicare and Medicaid are his two big entitlement programs that he pushes through, along with a lot of other federal spending in a lot of other areas. He also develops housing and urban development, HUD, which we still have around today. 240,000 low-rent homes are built. Low-rent homes are always being built today now. And this is something that, is another controversial thing. Johnson is really about trying to eliminate poverty. He declares war on poverty. This starts a very unfortunate string of presidents declaring war on things that you can't really stop. There was wars on inflation, wars on poverty in the future. We have the war on drugs. So they start declaring war on things that are impossible to eradicate. It's impossible to win a war on poverty. Poverty has always existed, but we're going to declare war on it. So you're declaring war on something, and it is a war you are assuredly going to lose, so to speak. But that's what Johnson did, and it was one of those, like I said, one of those things that presidents continue to do down the line. And one of the other big things, and we had talked about a lot of different things about immigration over the years, and all the way to 1965, you still had these racial quotas where we'd only take a certain amount from this country or that country. And the Immigration Act of 1965 eliminated that. It ended racial quotas. We stopped, we go more to a get in line type of system. Obviously, immigration is still an issue today, and one that we're